Hey, welcome to BACKtalk, the award-winning podcast from Successful Black Parenting Magazine, where we go beyond headlines and dig into conversations that actually shape our families, our culture, and our future. When you speak negatively about your child's other parent, your child does not just hear criticism, they internalize it because that parent is part of who they are. When you tear down your co-parent, you are speaking to half of your child. So stay tuned. I want you to learn more if you're going through this.
This is BACKtalk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, the most listened to podcast for parents by parents.
And we're back, and I'm your host, Janice Robinson-Celeste. If you're watching this live, you are officially part of the conversation. This show is powered by our growing community of Black parents, educators, caregivers, and advocates. And now we've taken that community to the next level with the Black Parenting Academy, a private space where you can connect, get answers, access resources that you won't find anywhere else. And I'll drop that link in the show later, so stay tuned and hang in there with us. And because we are live, yes, you can jump into the comments right now with your thoughts or questions. I'll be checking them throughout the episode. Bring your voice into this discussion. So settle in, share the stream if you believe conversations like this matter, and let's get into it. Because on this episode of BACKtalk, I'm speaking with Darlene Taylor, who is a clinical social worker and a healthy co-parenting educator. So welcome to the show, Darlene. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to let you introduce yourself because you've done so much and share the work that you do with families and co-parents.
My name is Darlene Taylor. I am a former clinical social worker. Now I focus on life coaching and co-parenting coaching. I work with parents who are divorced and or never married, who just really want to put their children first when it comes to parenting, keep them as the center of the relationship, and really do so in a healthy way, in a way that ensures their own peace and the health of their children. My background, like I said, is in clinical social work. So I've worked as a therapist and also have a background in personal training and nutrition coaching as well. So I've taught a little bit and done a lot of things, but most of my work has revolved around working with families. In 2022, I wrote a co-parenting book called It's Not About Us. And that was it's a memoir, but it's also a self-help book. It's about my journey to developing a healthy co-parenting relationship with my ex. And I felt like in reflecting on that, I had some nuggets of wisdom that I could pass on that I think would be really helpful for people. And so the book is sort of the center of my co-parenting and lays out the way I approach it in a way that I think that is really applicable for families, hopefully.
Okay. What is your story with co-parenting?
I was married, and then we divorced when my daughter was 2. And it was rocky, really rocky at the very beginning. It was rough. And I knew going into it that I wanted ultimately to be in a really good space and be able to be more than cordial, really, to be able to still be partners in the way that we raised our daughter. And I did not think that was going to happen at first. It was really tough. But I will say that from the very beginning, we tried to keep her at the center. There wasn't a whole lot of friction that she saw. I mean, she was young too, but there wasn't a whole lot of friction that she saw, but it was more, every time we got on the phone, every time I saw his name on my phone, there was a pit in my stomach, and there was just, constant arguments and constant back and forth. And that was really trying. And so it took probably, I would say, 6 or 7 years of being, icy, kind of cordial at the beginning. And then, gradually became a little bit more friendly. I think time helped that. I think a lot of little decisions that we made along the way helped that. And so when she was 12, so about 10 years after our divorce, we were living in Ohio, and he came to me and said, "Hey, I have a job opportunity in California, and I really want to take it. It's a great opportunity, but I don't want to leave Sam, that's our daughter.
Yeah.
So will you move to California? I am not from California. I knew no one in LA. And so my first thought was, no, I'm not going anywhere. You're asking me to do wife stuff, and I'm not your wife. So no. But I kind of slowed down a little bit and thought about the situation, realizing that she was 12. She was finishing up 6th grade, going to be starting 7th grade, understanding the point of life that she was at and how crucial it was for her to have both of us really all the time in her lives, but particularly as she's going into her teen years. And so that's why the book is called It's Not About Us, because ultimately that's why I made the decision to move, because it's not about us. It was about her. And whether or not I wanted to be in Los Angeles was sort of secondary to the fact that she needed us to be in the same place.
Right.
And so I picked up and we moved our lives to California.
That's amazing. And that was a lot to ask. Holy moly. Okay.
A lot to ask. And that was really what drew the book out of me, really, is because, when you move and you meet people, they're like, oh, what brought you here? And I'm like, funny story. So the more I would tell people this story, they're like, I wouldn't move down the street from my ex. I can't believe he moved around the country or across the country. And, so I had several people going, you really need to write a book about this, because how did you guys even get to the point that he would be audacious enough to ask you the question and that you would actually say yes? And so I did. I started kind of thinking about it, and I was like, maybe I have some things that I can share that might be helpful. Because if you had asked me that right after the divorce, I would have said, never, that would never happen. I would never do that. We're divorced. Why would I do that? So it was, thinking back on it, it was kind of a crazy decision to make, coming from the place that we came from. But it was definitely the best decision. We have a healthy, well-adjusted 19-year-old who just finished her first semester of college, and we're still good friends. I won't say good friends. We're still friends. I'm actually really good friends with his new partner, which is great. She's been part of the co-parenting team through our daughter's childhood, because they've been together for a long time. So it's so peaceful.
Peace is great. Peace is great. I mean, I can think of, when you were talking about some celebrities who have not co-parents so well and for various reasons. And the first ones came into my mind was, of course, Kanye West and Kim Kardashian, right? Yeah. And I just wondering what your thoughts are about celebrity couples who don't handle it well, that you've watched yourself, like them.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating. It's a little frustrating for me to see parents not be able to recognize that they need to love their child more than they hate the other parent. That it's frustrating for me to see that, because ultimately the only person who is hurt, not the only person, but the person who's hurt the most, are the children. And so yeah, I feel like, you guys have the resources to see your children whenever you want to. A lot of tension that comes with co-parenting comes from limited resources, right? A lot of arguments come from limited resources. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at these people like, y'all have pretty much unlimited resources to do what you need to do, to both be there and to keep your children first, and you're just choosing not to do it. And it feels, I don't want to be harsh, but it feels selfish. It feels selfish. I feel like when you make a decision to have children, you make a decision to put what they need first, period.
Right.
And sometimes that's a hard decision. I mean, I didn't really particularly want to move. I had a wonderful life in Cincinnati. I had built a business. I had a home. I had friends who had been my family. I'd been there for 18 years. I didn't want to leave. But that's what she needed. So that's what we did.
Right. I mean, I've seen other celebrities I thought were like the poster children of, co-parenting, like Will Smith, right? When they were raising their children and they got along with the previous mom of his baby, Trey. And I thought that was great. And I think that was the first experience that I really saw in the Black community of co-parenting, right? You agree with that?
My vision.
Oh, really? Okay.
My vision. I was the one who initiated the divorce, but thinking about it, that was really my vision. I was like, I want us to be like, I want her to have, a recital or a game, and we're all sitting there together, and we're all, we're all on the same team.
Yes.
Team Tammy, like that's what team we're on. Like we are all on
Agree.
the same team. So yeah, I'm very happy that we are there. But it's a hard place to get to. It's a humbling place to get to. And it takes a commitment. The subtitle of the book is a co-parenting survival guide to taking the high road. That's what I call my type of co-parenting, is high road co-parenting. And it's really difficult to stay on the high road sometimes because the low road feels really good sometimes. Really good.
I'm also, I went through a few divorces actually, but mainly when the kids were grown, it was I was married to a police officer, and ooh, it was rough, especially when he brought in the new girlfriend that then later became his wife,
Yes.
who had some issues. That's still probably not fixed, but I won't talk about her. But I did not. Oh well, she'll watch the show. I do not care. Anyway, but that was difficult because when it's hard, and you feel like you're not getting that cooperation on the other side, or the cooperation might be there might be ulterior motives when they do cooperate. Those are some challenging times, and you want to say, I caught myself saying many times when the kids were there,
I have a hole through my tongue sometimes in order to shut up, but it is those moments are so hard. And when I talk about this, cooperative co-parenting, high road co-parenting, it really takes, to do it successfully, it takes two people who are willing to do it, right? And sometimes, and I'll say this at the beginning of, I was on the high road first, right? Somebody's got to get there, and the hope is, if you stay there, and even though they're doing all the petty stuff and they're making it really, really difficult, if you make those choices to stay there, the hope is, if you are working with someone who's remotely emotionally healthy, that they will look and that they will see, what I'm fighting with somebody who's not fighting back. Right. So what am I doing? I'm wasting a whole lot of energy, when up here is just way easier for everyone. But it's hard because somebody does have to make that decision first, and has to just say, no, this is what I'm doing. I'm not engaging in that. I'm going to continue to respect you as my co-parent, respect you as their other parent. I'm not going to take the bait every time you poke the bear because you know exactly what to do. I'm not doing it. Yep. And that's tough.
It surely is. And when you said that it takes one person has to take the high road. And I just want to comment on that, because it also reminds me of Michelle Obama when she said, when they go low, we go high. Yes. However, I do, and I believe that in most cases, for sure, especially when it comes to children. Right. Absolutely. And what I want to tell the audience, if you hear that and you're having a hard time with it, I have adult children now, and I can tell you right now, they remember. I have my grandchildren here. If you can hear them in the background, they're having a fight or something. I don't know what's going on. Their mama's down there. But they remember when they get older. Absolutely. They remember who took the high road. They remember what you did to their other parent. Absolutely. They don't forget. It depends on how old they are, I guess, especially because I had like 10, 8, and 6. And so the 10-year-old will tell the others, no, that's not what happened. I was there. I will tell you, I don't even have to open my mouth now, because she's an adult, and she will tell them exactly what happened, So keep that in mind. They don't forget. They watch. They know. Mm-hmm. They know.
And I had a philosophy really early on, that I believe that the only person in the world that I owe an explanation to is my daughter. Right. Yes. I feel like at any point in her life, if she wants to say, hey, mom, why did this go down this way? What happened? I owe her an explanation. I do. That's the way I feel. So in really sitting with that, I decided that I never wanted to I wanted to be able to feel good about my answers that I was going to have to give her someday. And I didn't want to do anything that I was going to be ashamed of.
That's
I'm not saying that I did it perfectly by any stretch.
Right.
But I can say that I did not do anything that I was ashamed of.
That's the biggest goal, and in the end, it will be in your favor. I guarantee you. I've lived it. Sure. I had some of the worst incidents happen to me during that divorce process. We're cordial now because we have grandchildren together, right? So we had to come together, and that's the thing. When you divorce, it's not over. It's never over. You got the weddings when they get older. You have the bridal showers, the
Life.
baby
You
showers, birthdays, holidays with the grandkids. It's not
And how
over.
unfair is it for your children? Like I talk to people about this, it's not over when they're 18. It's not over when they graduate. Because
Mm-mm.
again, like you said, you have all of these events coming, you have life happening, right? So, and how unfair is it for you to have your child on the happiest day of their life be trying to figure out, how do I keep my mom away from my dad so they don't ruin my wedding? Like, that's so unfair.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Grow up. Like, I literally sometimes tell people, like, grow up. You're the
Right.
parent.
Yeah.
Grow up. Like, this
I
is
agree.
it's that to me is heartbreaking, that that's how they have to live their adulthood, trying to parent these grown adults who can't do it themselves.
Yes.
And I'm not saying everybody's going to end up best friends. It's not necessary. If you can get there, it's great. It's great. But I mean, but just being able to be cordial, to work together, and to be respectful. Like, that's the bottom line, just to be respectful. And
Right.
if you can do that minimally, it will make a huge difference.
I agree. What is the biggest misconception that parents have about healthy co-parenting after divorce? Hold on. Go ahead.
I would say like, that if it's that there's one person that's gonna have to be giving more, or that's gonna have to be the doormat, and it's all gonna be one way. I think sometimes when I talk about healthy co-parenting, they're like, but I believe this and I believe that. And, when to build a healthy co-parenting relationship, there's going to have to be some cooperation. There's going to have to be some compromise, right? Compromise means you don't always get 100% of what you want, and neither does the other person. So you're both going to have to be willing to give some. And I think sometimes people believe that, if it's healthy co-parenting, then it's really one co-parent driving the bus and the other parent just going, yeah, okay, whatever. And that's not co-parenting. So yeah, I think I would say that would be the biggest myth. Oh, I think you're muted still.
I always do this. I cannot unmute myself for some reason. I don't know what that is about on a Zoom, no matter what. But let's go to the next question. How does ongoing conflict between co-parents actually show up emotionally in children?
For boys, there's a lot of anger. A lot of anger. For girls, it shows up as anxiety.
Wow, it's different.
It's a little bit different. And I think there's a lot to that, just in our, societal, anger for boys and men is a much more, is a much easier emotion to access, because that's, people understand that from boys and men. Not that that's healthy at all, but I think that's why maybe it goes a little bit more that way, because we don't often socialize boys to really talk about what else they're feeling other than, mad, sad, glad. Like, that's about it. But for girls, it's all internalized, right? I think that there is a lot of anxiety in boys too, but it manifests, it shows as anger. And in girls, it's a lot of it's a lot of anxiety, a lot of sometimes perfectionism, sometimes just really being really hard on themselves, being really down on themselves. And because again, they're internalizing that conflict. And so they're feeling like, if my parent hates my dad and I'm half of my dad, then that means they kind of hate half of me. And that's a lot to digest. And when, a young developing mind can't rationalize out of that space. And so it's all internalized.
Right. And you know what? I realized that after a while. It took me a minute when my kids were young to realize whatever I say means that I'm talking about them too.
Mm-hmm.
If I say something as dad, I'm talking about them too.
Yep.
And once I wrapped my head around that,
Yeah.
I stopped doing it. That's when I stopped doing it. And I think that's what helped me the most, was to realize these kids you love are half of him. So if I'm saying that, just what you said, then I'm talking about half of them. And I can't do that, because that will hurt them growing up. And that's not my goal. I want to make sure they're healthy as possible.
Yep.
So that was important to me. How does ongoing conflict between co-parents actually, I'm sorry, I already asked you that question. I'm sorry about that. That's the next question I want to ask you, is how can parents set firm boundaries with an ex without creating more drama? I want to know.
Firm
Just draw a line.
boundaries. Yeah, right. So firm boundaries as in, yeah, I think it's just being very clear, being very concise. I think being able to learn how to communicate in a way that advocates for yourself and that is firm, right? And I think part of the reason that boundaries can be so tough is because sometimes people try to set boundaries and what they're actually trying to do, people set boundaries, and what they're actually trying to do is establish rules, right? The difference
Yeah.
between boundaries and rules try to regulate somebody else's behavior. Boundaries are about you and what you will tolerate and what you will accept. And so part of it is being really clear on what you want the relationship to look like, and then being able to communicate that in a really clear, concise way. And I think showing the respect that, kind of modeling, right? Giving them the respect that you want back, even if you're not getting it back at first. But being, just communicating as clearly as possible. If there's a lot of conflict, obviously communicating and writing is going to be your best friend, just so that you can go back to that. Hopefully, you can get past that piece of it, but just being able to communicate as clearly as you can and be really clear on what boundaries you want, and really ask yourself and be honest with yourself about why this is a boundary. Is this a boundary just because I know it will be hurtful to this person, right? I
Oh,
know it
wow.
will get under their skin. Is that why I'm making this boundary? Is, going back to, is what I'm doing centered on what is healthy for our children? Is
Right.
that what it is? If it's coming from that space, then it's going to be a healthy boundary, right? I mean, and that's that you're moving on, and so it's really difficult because you've got these two lives that work together, and now they're sort of diverging, but there's still this cord. So you've got to stay in the same lane, right?
Mhm.
At least with this person, and it's difficult to do, and it will take some time, and there will be some bumps. It's not going to be pretty at the beginning most of the time, right? You're going to have to figure out what that looks like. And it took us a little bit to figure out what that looks like too. I talk a lot about 4 pillars of co-parenting, and one of them is flexibility. And at the beginning of our co-parenting journey, I was like, no, I need to be flexible, I ended up being a doormat for a little while because I was the only one being flexible, and I wasn't like demanding or advocating for my share of that flexibility, right? If I'm the only one being flexible, then I'm being a doormat. Right?
Right.
So it's about, being able to know when to advocate for yourself, and to know when to advocate for your needs, because those are important too. I'm not saying put your child's needs first and put yours nowhere on the board. Yours are still there, and they're still important, but keeping their needs first.
No, absolutely. And I've seen some like different apps and software to
Yeah.
help parents to co-parent and keep the communication going, especially if they can't communicate with each other. Have you
Yes,
seen
there's an
those
app called
lately?
yes, there's an app called Proper Calm, which is great. Actually, some court systems across the country are using it, and it is specifically about proper communication, right? If you can't, you type in like your email or your text, and you put it through the system, and they rewrite it to what you probably should have said
Mhm.
in a way that is not inflammatory and all of those things, and you can send it that way. There's my family wizard is a big one that a lot of people use, and it's great. I think it's
Shut
got
the door. Sorry.
calendars in there and different things that you can, like mutual calendars, different ways that you can keep up with expenses and things like that. I mean, when we separated, it was 2008, so none of this stuff was even out. But there's a lot of information and a lot of tools out there to make co-parenting a lot easier now.
Okay. Well, what are some practical communication rules co-parents should follow to keep the conversation productive? Like, what's the number one rule?
BIFF communication.
What?
Brief, BIFF. It's called BIFF: brief, informative, friendly, and firm.
Biff. Okay.
Beef.
And
Yep, and that is
explaining.
just, yeah, keep it brief, no flowery language, informative, focus on what it is that you're doing, what it is that you want, what business, focus on the business, friendly and firm, right? Like, and so I think if you can filter your things through that, that's going to be your best bet.
Okay. Y'all keep that up. Understand that. I like that. I like the abbreviation, makes it easy to remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's from I can't remember who, I should know that. I can't remember who's first sort of introduced that communication style, but it works for all kinds of communications. It works at work, works at home. Yeah, but it's really great in this situation.
But what if you really, 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 we talked about this a little bit, but you really, really, really don't like your co-parent or that. What happens? What do you do?
My sister's in that situation. She's co-parenting with someone who is not emotionally healthy at all. It is a terrible relationship. He's dragged her back to court several different times, and it's really tough. And I admire her so much because talk about high road co-parenting, but I actually co-parented with someone who was not a great partner, but he's a really good co-parent, right? We got on the same page of keeping our kid in the middle and on the focus of our co-parenting really quickly. And so I know that my journey is not like everyone else's, and a lot of people have an ex that is just really difficult to deal with and wants to keep the conflict going. And I admire my sister so much because she continues to stay on the high road. She continues to not take the bait. She continues to make sure that, when her son was little, that he went over to dad's house on Father's Day with a card and a gift. And, she just doesn't go low. And sometimes, and I'm like, I'm proud of you because I can't even see that man and I can't even be in the same room with him, and I didn't divorce him. But she, but what she's seeing now is her 16-year-old son, who has seen the drama over the past 10 years, right? And is just like really kind of doesn't have any respect for his dad anymore, and really he's starting to pull away from that relationship. Yet my sister is still consistently like, no, you need to, it's your time with your dad. You need to go over there and be with your dad. I don't want to go. Well, that's your dad's time. You need to do that. And so just really, sticking to the parenting plan, trying to stay on the high road, as much as you may want to, to tell them about, to give them all the dirt, right? To give them the reason that things are being difficult. The reason that things are happening the way that they're happening. She really tries to keep that stuff away from him and really tries to not paint him with any sort of a negative brush, because the reality is, like, kids are smart, even when they're little. And, as you said, as they're growing up, they know, they understand what's happening. And so at the end of the day, I feel like as a parent, when they're young, if I've done everything to sort of that I can do to facilitate their relationship, and then as they get older and they start being able to do that for themselves, if I've made sure that I'm not an obstacle in their relationship, then that's my job, right? To make sure that I facilitate that relationship as much as possible when it's appropriate. And then, like at the point, they get to be 18, whatever, then they can facilitate it themselves, but it's on me to stay out of the middle of that, right? It's still on me to not, badmouth her dad, and to not, roll my eyes when she says something, all of the things that it's so hard not to do sometimes. But yeah, just being able to just not be a hindrance to that relationship.
No, absolutely. And it's difficult because you can see when the other parent's hurting the child, and it's the parent, your mom, especially moms, and or dad, and it depends on who's the custodial parent. But you don't, you do everything you can to protect that child,
Protect
right?
them.
And then when you see the other parents hurting, it's hard to stay on that high road.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And that's the thing that really frustrates me. I mean, most of the parents that I work with are parents who are coming together because they want to cooperate with each other.
Right.
They want to try to be, they want to be co-parents, right? They don't want to just be, parents who are doing their own thing and that they have to talk at specific times. They want to work together. But that can be, it's really difficult when you are trying to co-parent with someone who's not trying to co-parent with you.
I agree. That's difficult. I went through some of those situations as well, and it was just it's heartbreaking. But what should parents do when their co-parent triggers old emotions or reactions? What do they? How should they manage that?
I think get into therapy. As if you were going through a divorce, get a support system around you, get people around you, get a therapist so that you can work through, because you're grieving the loss of a relationship, and you are really really important to understand the patterns of your relationship and the patterns of how you all communicate, so that you can do your best to improve those, because you're still going to have to communicate with this person. So it's not just, okay, we're divorced, I don't have to deal with this person anymore. I still have to figure out how to build some sort of a healthy relationship with my co-parent, because we have a job to do. And so get into therapy and start doing your own work, start doing your own healing, because sometimes that's what bleeds into the relationship, is you're still mad at them because of some stuff they did in the relationship. But they, again, like I said, they may be a terrible partner, but that doesn't make them a terrible parent. And so it's on you to be able to separate those two things, and just say, okay, I need to deal with this person as the parent. What are we doing in those parenting roles? Because this other stuff, we need to heal on our own. And that's really what it is. It's about making sure that you're doing your own work of healing on your own.
Absolutely. Now, we talked about how boys get angry. Those are emotions they feel, and how girls get anxiety from like a bad co-parenting type relationship. But what are our children actually learning when they watch their parents co-parent respectfully? What are they learning?
They're learning humility. They're learning cooperation. They're learning respect. They're learning that you don't have to. They're learning that you can go through something bad with someone and come out on the other side of it with something that's still productive. That they're learning that when relationships end, it doesn't have to be tragic. It doesn't have to be toxic. You don't have to hate the person that you're no longer in a relationship with. Sometimes relationships end because they needed to, right? And both people are better on the other side of it. And that was our situation. We are both better people because we are not together. And so they're seeing healthy versions of their parents. That's what they need. That's what they need more than anything, is the healthiest version of their parents that they can get. And sometimes that means not being married or being in a relationship or living in the same house. And so that's what you are modeling for them. You're modeling healthy relationships. You're modeling healthy conflict, healthy strategies to deal with conflict. All of the things that you're doing, because they're watching and they're paying attention. They're watching and they're listening. And I think, when you're showing them too, that taking care of yourself, taking care of your own mental health is important, and that you don't stay in a relationship for the sake of staying in that relationship if it's not good for you. If it's a toxic relationship, then I always said I would rather her see me unpartnered and single and healthy and thriving on my own than from her coming from a broken home, which is a term that I hate. Than to see her mom stay in this toxic relationship where she wasn't being treated the way that I would want my daughter treated in a relationship. And I was not, and I was a shell of myself. And if I had stayed, that's what I would have been modeling for her, was what she had to look forward to in a marriage. And that is not what I would want for anybody, let alone my daughter. So I always said I would rather not ever have another partner, but model, me being happy and healthy and, living my best life, being the best version of myself, even if I was not with her dad.
Yeah. And it's important for them to see what a healthy relationship looks like, because that's what they're going to look for. Whatever they see you're going through when they get older, right?
Absolutely. And I actually had something, I am repartnered now, and my daughter has a really good relationship with my partner. And one of the first times that we were together, the three of us were together, my daughter, we had gone to lunch and then we dropped him off somewhere. I can't remember, but we're in the car and she's like, this is so weird. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, being around like parental figures that like each other and like that are like all lovey-dovey and like a real relationship. Like, this is weird. Like and I was like, that it kind of hurt my heart, because she's like, I haven't really seen that and I haven't really experienced that. And I think, but when we were talking, she said like, I don't know if I ever want to get married. I mean, it's like everybody around me is divorced, so I don't know. But that was also before she had her first boyfriend. So now
I had heard that from my kids, so I understand.
Yeah. And so I think it makes them a little trepidatious when it comes to marriage, thinking about, what the future is, because they've seen marriages break up. And so I think they understand that, like, as much as we would want marriage to be forever, sometimes it's not. And that's a scary place, I think, for them to be. And so I think just having open communication about that. And I've talked to her about that. Like, what is it that, or do you still feel that way? Do you still feel like you'll never get married? And what would need to change for you to change your mind? What is the scariest part of that for you? And, anytime you can have those open conversations, it's going to be helpful and healthy for them.
No, absolutely. And it is very important. I can't stress that enough. Whatever they see you do, and it's not just relationships, it's almost everything. How you wear your clothes, what you look like, everything down to relationships. So if you think they're not going to marry you, you're crazy, because that's what they
even in like how you handle the breakup, right?
Oh yeah.
Even if they see you, pulling the covers over your head, not taking care of yourself, not eating, like that's what they think in the end of a relationship has to look like, right? And I'm not saying, don't be sad. I'm not saying don't have your emotions, but just understand that they're watching that, and that's going to be like what they think they're supposed, that breakups look like,
right?
And
And you know what? I think sometimes we're programmed to think that's what a relationship should be like. It should be animosity, right? Like.
Yes.
Because I went through this with my last husband, last divorce, and I divorced all my husbands for whatever reason. I was the one that initiated it.
Yeah.
But, it's like we have this script in mind of how it should be. Maybe it's divorce court. I don't know what it is or where it comes from. But I remember telling my last ex, look, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. I'm going to protect myself so you don't get me. And I'm like, I am not interested in hurting you.
Right.
And I would hope you wouldn't want to hurt me. I don't want to go through this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go through this. You can have whatever you want. I'm fine with it. I'll take whatever you don't want. I do not care. Right. Just go. Let's just go.
Right. But that's part of why I shared my story, is because the reason I think that we have that narrative is because that's what we hear about, right? We hear about the bad stuff. We hear about the toxicity. We hear about parental alienation. No one talks about the parents who are like, you know what? This didn't work, but we've got these great kids. Let's figure out how to work together. We don't talk about that. And so that's part of the reason I wanted to share my story, to give people hope that there is another way to do this. You don't have to hate each other through this whole process. It doesn't have to be this thing that just rips you apart, while you're going through it and leaves all of you just in a wreckage on the other side of it. Like, you can come out of this and come out on the other side healthy and healthier and probably happier. Like, it's a possibility. It can be done. We just don't hear about it and we don't see it. And that was why, I didn't talk. Like I said, we struggled a lot, and there was a lot that we didn't do right at the very beginning, things that I maybe would do differently. But I didn't write about any of that in the book, because everybody knows those stories. Everybody knows how to do it badly. We see it every day.
Exactly.
So I wanted to give people the things that we did right. And if you can just stack those, I think you're going to get to where you want to go.
Okay. And what is the one co-parenting mistake that you see parents make that can cause long-term harm? What do they need to stop doing right now?
It's what you said at the top of the show, talking badly about the other parent. That damage, I don't know if I'm going to say it. It's irreparable, that you're doing irreparable harm to your children because they are internalizing all of that. And so I know that it is hard. I know that it's difficult, and I know that it won't be 100%, even if you've already been doing it. If you can stop doing it from today on, that is going to give your children a big gift. But that's the biggest thing that I think people are doing wrong, is not being able to just, that's what your friends are for. That's what your family's for, right? Is to go ahead and get all of that out before it's in front of your children. The other piece too that I'm going to add, and I know that we can't control anybody else's behavior, but we can set boundaries around what we allow our children to be around. And so it's not even about you not saying anything negative about them.
Yes.
It's allowing anybody else in your world to talk negatively about them. So
important.
And so again, like, people are going to say whatever they're going to say, but you can keep your children, protected from those people, because that's just as important. So that's, if you can only do one thing, if you can only manage to do one thing, make it that.
Absolutely. That's great to mention about other people, because I didn't even think about that right now, but you're right. So if you're not talking poorly about the other parent, but the grandmom or
Right.
auntie is, and right in front
Exactly.
of the kids, that's just as
Exactly.
damaging, right? Yeah. That's
And
horrible.
that's something that you can stop. And so, and it's just as it was as simple as I'm like, I'm not speaking negatively about her dad, and no one around me will be. If you can't stick to that, then you can't be around her. Sorry. That's
Yeah.
just the way it goes. And and that's sometimes a hard boundary to put up with people, but I think it's one of the best things that you can do.
Oh, absolutely. Let's talk about healing a little more. You mentioned going to therapy, but how can parents still work on their own healing while still showing up consistently for their kids, especially
Mhm.
when like the other parent doesn't want to go to therapy and needs it? We run into that often, especially in our community.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's important to know that what children need to be okay through a divorce is one healthy parent.
Mm,
Be great
okay.
for them to have both, that's ideal. But if you can only do one thing, if the other person is not going to do what they need to do, then you need to be that one healthy parent, which means you need to be that pillar of consistency, right? You need to be healthy on your own. And so I really think having your support system is huge, having friends and family around to support you, whether it be with childcare, whether it be with just, going out and doing something fun for yourself with your friends when it's not your parenting time, right? Building a happy, healthy, full life around you that is not only focused on parenting. Part of what I talk about in the book is about building my own life and letting my daughter see that I had a life, that I was more than mom, right? That I'm Darlene, and Darlene likes all of these things that have nothing to do with being Sam's mom. And so I think that's a piece of healing too, because a lot of times I think we lose pieces of ourselves in relationships and then through a divorce. And I hear people say, I want to get back to this and that. You can't, there's no going back. That version of you is gone, because every
Mm,
single thing that we go through in our lives we carry with us.
yeah.
So you can't go back. So what
Wow.
you're doing now is building this version of you with everything that you've experienced and everything that you've learned, and all of your new hopes and all of your new dreams. That's what you're carrying forward. So focus on that, focusing forward, and not like, oh, I was this and I was that, and I really missed it. You can miss that person, but bring those pieces with you and leave the other stuff back there, because there was some other stuff that wasn't working for you, because that's why stuff happened the way it happened back there. Right. So it's like looking at that, like, what can I learn? Right. Life gives us blessings or lessons. That's it. Those are the only two things we get.
Blessings or lessons? I love that. We need to put that on a t-shirt,
Yeah,
Darlene.
that's all we get.
Life
So,
gives you blessings or
if
lessons.
this isn't feeling like a blessing, then I'm supposed to be learning something. What am I? And I almost feel like the bigger the thing is that feels so tough, the bigger and more important the lessons are. And so it's like
Mm,
really focus on what can I extract from this relationship, how it, really dissecting it. What happened? Why are we where we are right now? What was my piece in it? Because everybody has a piece in it, right?
okay.
So what was
Yeah.
my part in this? How can I be better? How can I not make the same mistakes? Because I'm going to make some different ones later, but how can I not make these again? Right.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and it's a lot of self-reflection. It's a lot of willingness to kind of look at yourself and say, yeah, I was a good partner in a lot of ways, and I could have been better in some of these ways. And I'm going to, the next time, if I choose to be in another relationship, I'm going to take those lessons with me.
Right, right. Well, tell us about your book. Can you show everybody your book?
Yeah, it's called "It's Not About Us: A Co-Parenting Survival Guide to Taking the High Road." Available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There's also a guided journal that goes with it, which I love. As a therapist, that was one of the things that I always um, recommended to my clients, was to journal. And so many times people are like, I can't journal, I don't know what to write. And so when I wrote the book, I said, I really want people to be able to chew on the things that they've learned and figure out, how can I apply this? And so we created a guided journal to go with the book to help you implement those 4 pillars of co-parenting. Each chapter of the book is a story of something that happened early in our co-parenting journey, and then the lesson that I took from that. And so they're what I call hard-won wisdoms. And so there's about 15 of those throughout the book. And those are the real nuggets that I want people to take away. The beautiful thing about this book is the foreword was written by my ex-husband and the afterword was written by our daughter. So
Oh,
it was really, it was really, our whole family was a piece of this book, and it was great. The book is also available as an audiobook, and I narrate the audiobook, and her dad does his part and she does her part on the audiobook. And so it all just came together beautifully. But it really is, I really hope that people read it and find hope and find something that they can take away to build a healthier co-parenting relationship.
no, that is fantastic. I love that idea. That was beautifully done. Congratulations on that. And
Thank
that
you.
idea, fantastic. I wouldn't have, I would have never thought of that. I had the X right, the forward, and
I
then
didn't know what he was going to say when I asked. I was a little scared, but he was great. He was like, before, so I'd written like the first 3 or 4 chapters, and so I went to pick her up from his house one day, and I was like, okay, so look, so I'm writing this book. I'd really love for you to write the foreword. I've written the first couple chapters, so you can go ahead and read it, so you can get an idea that this isn't some sort of like salacious tell-all book that's making you look terrible. But like, and he was just like, yeah, done. I was like, you haven't even read. He was like, it's fine, it's done. I know it's gonna be great. I'll do it.
fantastic.
I was like,
Well,
okay, great. So
well, I wish you all the sales and best of luck. We have a lot of people watching on
yeah.
Instagram, so make sure you tell our audience how to follow your work and to continue learning from you. So how do we find you? How do we find your book?
DarleneTaylor.com. That's got the book. The book is there. That's a little bit more about me, about my coaching. I would love to work with anybody who wants to work and who wants to really try to be the best co-parent that they can be. I would love that.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Darlene, I want to thank you for sharing your time, your wisdom, your heart with us today.
Thank
It
you.
was wonderful talking to you and learning from you. So
Thank
I
you.
hope everyone that's listening, whether you're on Instagram, watching the replay, watching it live, will pick up your book if they're going through it, or maybe pick up your book for someone else who might be going
A
through it.
great
So
Christmas gift.
absolutely. I think so too. How about that? We still have time.
Yep.
All right.
Amazon Prime. We'll get it there.
Fantastic. Well, I also want to thank everyone who's watching the replay. Thank you for being here and for supporting BACKtalk, the award-winning podcast from Successful Black Parenting Magazine. This show exists because our community shows up, engages, and elevates the conversation. If you haven't already, make sure you follow us on every platform: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. Wherever you scroll, we're there. Hit follow, hit like, turn on the notifications, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And I know you know someone who needs to hear it. We'll be back with more conversations that matter, more voices that inspire, more truth that strengthens Black families everywhere. And until next time, I wish you all the best and much success. So take care, and thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to BACKtalk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine. We'll see you soon.